computer, and after the discussion, I will send to you the YouTube link for you guys to review. And if you cannot follow during the discussion, you can interrupt me anytime, or you can go check the YouTube link to see the video because you can pause the video anytime you want. Okay. Okay, let's look at the first question. So now, uh, the first question's figure is about the aggregate income, x-axis, and the aggregate saving. So there are several equations that you need to memorize for this chapter, for this discussion. Firstly, it aggregate income equals to the aggregate saving and aggregate consumption. So you can imagine that after having your salary, your wage, what would you do? So you will consume, right? Buy some essentials, buy some food, and the rest of your money will go to your bank account, and probably you will have a saving account for you to save the rest of your money. Okay, so this is the first equation that you need to understand. Your income goes to saving and consumption. Okay, then we can look at this figure. So firstly, remember last time I told you guys how to find the form of a linear relationship, right? So now saving is your y and income is your x. So let's rename income as y, okay? So now you need to find a relationship that s equals a plus b times y, because as you can see, this is a linear relationship between the saving and income. And remember how to get a and b for some special points, right? So for example, in this figure, we can find one special point is 0, -60, and 600, 0. So after substituting these 2 points, you can get a and b because a and b are just constants, okay? And then you can get the form of this function is -60 plus 0.1 times y. So after getting this equation, then you can look at the following question, okay? Now, if the aggregate income is 1,000, aggregate consumption is what? So actually this answer is wrong, is here. So let's look at this question. Now you need to substitute this value as your aggregate income, y, to get s or consumption. So substituting the value, you will get s equals 40, right? Remember the first equation that you need to memorize is after getting saving and you know the income, what's consumption? It's just consumption equals y subtract saving, right? So now y is 1,000, saving is 40, so you will know the aggregate consumption is 960, okay? So for B, on this graph, 0.1 means what? So 0.1 is from here, right? This is the slope of it. It's called the marginal propensity to save, okay? Which means that if your income increased about $1, then your saving will increase about $0.1. So you are using 10% of your total income to be the aggregate saving. So this is called the marginal propensity to save. Okay, so for question C, I think now you know how to solve it, right? Because it's asking you when saving is 20, then what is the aggregate income? So you just need to substitute when S is 20, what is Y? And you already know their relationship is here, right? So when we look at this question, always the first step is to get the linear form, the linear relationship between the aggregate saving and aggregate income. Then you will know all the following information. Okay. Any problems about question 1? If you have it, you can just tap in the chat box. Okay. Let's see if someone tapped. Okay, very good. Then we can keep going. Question 2. So question 2 is also about the definition. Now you earn additional 200 in disposable income 1 week for feeding your neighbors for rent. Then your total consumption and saving will increase exactly equals to 200. Why? Because from the first equation, we already know your income goes to saving and consumption. So now your income increased 200, so your saving and consumption will go up 200. Okay, so this is just about the first equation that we talked about. Okay, and question 3. So different with question 1, question 3 gives you a table of it. So in the most cases, the table also tells you a linear relationship between them, between the aggregate saving and aggregate consumption. But sometimes it would some non-linear form. So if you're worried about this is non-linear relationship between the aggregate income and aggregate consumption, you can draw a graph of it. But in this question, it's just linear. So remember for this question, first step to find their relationship to get A and B, right? How to get A and B? Find some special points. So for example, I think this one is pretty special, as you can see. When Y is 0, C is 200. So the intercept would be 200. Then all these 4 points, 400, 500, this point you can substitute to it and get B. So, but you can use the following 3. You can which one you prefer, you choose one. Okay. Then you will get consumption and income's relationship is here. Okay. Now in the first question, remember we get S equals to -6 and 0.1y. Here is consumption equals to blah, 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 right? So, and remember S plus C equals to Y. So after getting this, you will get this, okay? After getting S, you will get C. So now what's the society's marginal propensity to saving? So there's a small trick because here the slope is what? Is marginal propensity to consume, right? Remember, only 2 proportion of your income, S and C. Now you use 3/4 to be your consumption, then the rest of 1/4 would be your saving. So the trick is that even though for question A, you get the relationship between consumption and income, but B is asking you the marginal propensity to save. So be very careful about this, okay? Also, for C, it also asking you the aggregate saving would be what? So after using the first equation, after substituting the aggregate income equals to 300, you will get C equals to some value. Then how to get S? S is just Y subtract C. Okay, so this also a trick that it's asking you the saving. So you need to make one more step to get saving because you cannot get saving directly from A's equation. Okay, and the last question is not trick because you just need to substitute Y equals 2000 and then get the consumption. Okay. Any problems about question 3? Let's see if someone tapped message. Okay, no one have question. Very good. Then we can keep going. Okay, so now we have a new figure, but don't worry, this figure is also not that difficult. Okay, let's look at this figure together without looking the following questions. Okay, so now the y-axis is consumption. We are familiar with it, right? But this consumption is for personal consumption. And the x-axis is income. So you get the consumption function. Remember, the slope is the propensity to save, to consume, and the intercept is what? Is when his income is zero, he also need to consume to support their basic life. Okay? And there's a special line, 45-degree line. So what does this mean? It means that along this 45-degree line, consumption, let's see, just C equals to Y. Because remember, x-axis is income, y-axis is consumption. And what the character of the 45-degree line is this equals, right? So along the 45-degree line, C equals to Y. Okay, then we can look at the following question, what they are asking. Firstly, the line segment BD represents what? So BD, we already know it is when income equals to zero, Jerry also needs to consume, right? So the answer is C. And Jerry's income equals to his consumption equals to income at point what? Remember, we know for the 45-degree line, C equals to Y. And this is Jerry's income consumption function. So the intercept here, A, would be when Jerry's consumption equals to his income. Okay. And Jerry's saving equals to zero at income level what? So actually this is also question 2 because remember, income goes to saving and consumption. Now if saving equals to zero, which means income equals to C, right? So at point A, Y equals to C. So at point A, the income level is Y1, okay? And for question 4, along the segment AB, Jerry's saving is what? Or consumption is what? Okay, then we can look at this AB. So for the 45-degree line, C equals to Y. But here, you can see that the actual consumption is larger than Y itself, right? So if C larger than Y, then S is Y subtract C would be negative, right? So the answer is D. Because at the segment AB, even though Jerry don't have much income, but he also needs to buy essentials. Okay. And an increase in Jerry's income is represented by what? Increase in income. So it would be just the X larger income goes to right. Actually, there are many answers. For example, B to A to C, B to C, both okay, but there's only one satisfied B to A. Okay, so in this question, it's important to understand the 45-degree line because the intercept of the 45-degree line and the consumption function is the equilibrium that the consumption equals to income. And if consumption equals to income at point A, at this point also saving would be 0. Okay, now you can think, what is AC? AC means Y equals to consumption. So now at this segment, the saving would be positive, right? Okay, any doubts about question 4? You can tap. Okay, no one have question. Very good. Then we can keep going. So question 5 is just definition. You can just memorize it. Equilibrium is defined as the point which the planned aggregate expenditure equals to the aggregate output. Okay. So now let's look at table 6. This table actually have one more information. So previous table, we know the aggregate income, aggregate consumption. So here, you can think the output is the aggregate income. Consumption, aggregate consumption, we already have it, but with what is the planned investment? Okay, so planned investment is the investment that you plan to do, but actually sometimes it's not necessary that planned investment equals to actual investment. In the most cases, not. So let's look at this table, and there are several equations that you need to memorize. Firstly, the aggregate expenditure equals, let's just write the full name. Expenditure equals the aggregate consumption and the planned income, planned investment. Okay, so then you can look after question 1. When the aggregate output level is 400 billion, the planned expenditure equals to what? So 400 billion, then aggregate income consumption is 450. The plan is 100. So you can just get the value, right? So now you can see, based on the definition of the equilibrium point, if this at the equilibrium when output is 400, is not, right? Because here the aggregate expenditure is 550, but the aggregate output is 400. When these two equal, then we can get the equilibrium. Okay, another equation that you need to memorize is the actual, so you can call it saving, equals the output subtract consumption, right? So this is basically from the S equals to Y subtract C. This is the same. So now at question 2, at an aggregate output level of 800, so only look at this row, then we can get aggregate output is 800, aggregate consumption is 750. So what the aggregate saving? It's just 50, right? But planned investment is 100. So also not at the equilibrium. And for 3, at aggregate output level of 200 billion, okay, only look at the first row. Then unplanned inventory change is what? So unplanned inventory change definition is here. The Y subtract aggregate expenditure equals output subtract aggregate consumption subtract planned investment. So now I think after looking at this first row, you will get your answer, because here this is 200, right? This AC is 300 and planned income is 100. So you will get the unplanned inventory change is negative 200. Okay, this is another equation that you need to memorize. And for question 4, so at what aggregate output level there will be 1 billion unplanned decrease in the inventories? So which means when the unplanned inventory change is negative 100. Okay, so you need to try to figure out which column cause this result. You will find at the output level equals to 600, then the unplanned inventory change would be negative 100. Okay, so that's it. And question 5, also about definition of the equilibrium, right? Aggregate output equals to aggregate expenditure, then we call it the aggregate equilibrium. So in this figure, when it happened, it only happened when the aggregate output equals to 1,000, right? Then the aggregate consumption plus the planned investment would be equal to aggregate output. Okay. And 6, which of the following of the state is false? B is false, because you will calculate this is a negative unplanned inventory change. Only when the output level goes to 1,000, there's zero unplanned inventory change. All output below 1,000 would get a negative unplanned inventory change. And question 7, I don't think the answer is very good, because you only need to find the equilibrium point. Okay, so because it asks you planned saving equals to planned investment at aggregate level of what? So actually this is also about the equilibrium. So you don't need to calculate, because you already know at the output level equals to 1,000, you will get the equilibrium. Okay, so even though this is a long question, but there are only two new equations that you need to know. Firstly, what's the definition of the aggregate expenditure, and what's the definition of the unplanned inventory change? Okay. Any doubts? Clear about this question? Okay, no one tapped. Very good. So we can keep going. So for this question, I will leave it to yourself because as you can see, this is pretty similar with our previous question 4, right? So, but there's another thing that you need to focus. This is the aggregate expenditure rather than consumption, okay? And the equations that you need to know from this equation, and we all talked about it. We all talked about it from the last question, okay? You can pause anytime you want when you read the video so you can get the correct answer. Okay, then let's look at the next 3 because next 3 questions are about the definitions. Firstly, if MPC is 0.9, then the multiplier is what? You can just memorize it. Multiplier is just 1 divided 1 minus MPC, marginal propensity to consume. Okay, and for C, if you know C equals to 100 plus 0 y and I is 50, remember C plus I equals to y, right? And you can just substitute to it. C is 100 and 0.8y and I is 500 and get y. You will get 0.y equals to 150. So y equals to 750, right? So you only need to substitute to it. There's no something fancy. Okay, and the question 10, the inventory change would be here. Remember, unplanned inventory is the production subtract aggregate expenditure. But this is the inventory change for one company, so you can just use this definition. This would be easy for you, right? So there's no total expenditure here, just telling you the total sale, total production. Okay. Now we can look at question 11. So for question 11, for the first question, I don't think I need to show you guys the step because this is also about the how to get the linear form, right? How to get A and B. But for 2, a 10 million decrease in autonomous consumption means what? So because you see AE0 is here, the 10 million change would cause the AE curve shift 10 million. So now the intercept is 40 and the slope doesn't change. So AE equals 40 and 0.75y. So now what's the equilibrium? Equilibrium means AE equals to y, right? So you will get the new equilibrium is 160 and previously is 200, right? So just be careful that the decrease in the autonomous consumption is a shift rather than the movement along AE curve. Okay, so this is all about your week 3's discussion. Any question? Any doubts? Clear? Okay, no one tapped. Then I need to make a screenshot. Just stay here. It's okay.